Good evening. Today I'd like to discuss the concept of groupthink. Often when you start pointing out trends in political movements, beliefs, etc., you're often dismissed as a conspiracy theorist. That you believe that somewhere in some dark room someplace, people in hoods and robes are secretly making plans to control the world. That's not the case. I do not believe that. But I do fully believe in the concept of groupthink. Now, what's groupthink? Groupthink is common, happens every day. It's the same kind of thing that allows birds to seem to move as one. What happens in groupthink is that you share common beliefs, common goals, and common accepted realities and solutions, or methodologies of finding solutions. Now, this happens pretty much in every environment. Now, when does groupthink become dangerous? I mean, groupthink exists amongst religious groups, amongst atheists, amongst agnostics, amongst Democrats, liberals, environmentalists, conservatives, etc. Groupthink exists in every one of those groups. When it becomes dangerous is when it becomes the dominant methodology of controlling the country, which we currently have, the leftist groupthink, the progressive groupthink. Now, what happens in a groupthink is what you first do is you first establish a baseline way of thinking. In the case of the progressive movement, it is to be critical of the United States, critical of traditions, critical of our country, our people. You also have to look at all the traditions and assume that they are flawed, oppressive, intentionally oppressive, not just simply accidentally oppressive. They are intentionally oppressive, unfair, etc. So you get that groupthink installed, and a lot of times that happens in colleges. Young men and women will go to college and they will learn from their professors how terrible America is, because a lot of leftists hang out in colleges, and they will teach the kids to dislike the country. Why do they do this? Were they in some kind of group meeting saying, yes, we must do this? No, not at all. They're a result of groupthink also. They were created by the 60s movement. Many of these professors got into power in the 60s. And their groupthink was created in those civil rights and the free sex and free drugs, free love, anti-war movement. That's where they were created. Their groupthink was formed. Now they've taken up residence in the public school system because they really had no other marketable skills. They were just well educated. They really did not know how to run businesses. They really did not know how to operate in the real world. Their ideas don't work in the real world, but in a college classroom, they don't have to work. They just have to be taught. So you establish the groupthink amongst the young. Now, you get people like Obama, who are raised with that groupthink foisted onto them. And they then go on and they start acting. Now, from an outsider's perspective, someone who's not a member of that groupthink, it looks like they must be having secret meetings talking to each other because they sound exactly alike, they say exactly the same things, their solutions are always the same, their goals seem to be universally accepted amongst their group. There seems to be consistency in almost everything they do, almost like they're clones. So you assume some dark secret meetings are taking place. That's not true. They are actually a product of groupthink. They've been taught to think in certain ways and patterns, such that it's almost impossible to get into their brains and explain flaws in their groupthink. Now, in the United States, we have a system that is designed to basically decentralize power. Our goal is the original founding fathers never wanted power to be too centralized. currently is almost entirely centralized in the progressive movement. And that's why it's imperative that we as a people remove that centralization, get rid of the supermajorities of these individuals. The best government I found was one that was split between two different forms of groupthink. Now, the Republicans don't really have real groupthink. The Democrats don't have groupthink either. Let me clarify that for a second. Democrats are a collection of organizations, many of whom are far-left radicals. The party has been taken over by far-leftist progressives. The Republican Party is much the same. It's a collection of groups. And these groups in the Republican Party is largely taken over by progressives also. Conservatives are the primary voting bloc of that Republican Party. And hence you see the conflict between the two, where the conservatives abandon the party, they lose elections. The conservatives come back, they win elections. That sort of thing. And Democrats, they're conservatives or moderates, don't have any power. They're tokens. The Blue Dog Democrats were just only encouraged to be elected so that the progressives could run over everybody with their goals. And the Blue Dogs are ultimately expendable, and they're only there to get the Democrats power, to establish so that the liberal progressive groupthink can get its goals. So anyways, bottom line is, the big problem isn't really the Democrats or Republicans. The big problem is progressive groupthink. And they sound like clones, they sound exactly like each other, and it's not because they're having secret meetings, it's because they've been taught to think in a certain way that they are physically unable or very difficult to break out of. Thank you very much. Have yourself a good day, and God bless.